When I started watching classic Doctor Who in 2009 at my high school Doctor Who Appreciation Society, we watched Tomb of the Cybermen, The Green Death, The Invisible Enemy, and Pyramids of Mars. I did not like Pyramids of Mars. Fast forward 14 years later, and I've been dreading returning to this one, made even worse by the fact that I forgot I don't own a physical copy, so I had to resort to Daily Motion. Pyramids of Mars? Pyramid of Mars, more like. Why'd I have to dislike one of the popular ones? Alright, here we go. The generally well-received Fourth Doctor story that I dislike due to personal reasons. I mentioned it in my Third Doctor review of The Daemons, but as a Christian, I just can't stand this kind of blasphemous content, and I know that's something that I doubt very few of you can relate to these days. A lot of the time I can handle it, like I've seen all of Good Omens and most of Supernatural, but sometimes I just have my limit. And from what I can remember, this was probably one of the first times where I discovered one of my limits.
What I'm specifically referring to is a brief line of dialogue where the Doctor verbally confronts the villain near the end of the final episode, where he essentially names him as, well, the big bad guy in Christian mythology. Now, obviously, I'm blowing things out of proportion when I say, I can't stand this sort of thing. And I understand that it's not like specifically like, hey, this is who this character is. That's just a list of names of who he could represent. So I get that. I know it should be Egyptian, but to me, I just felt like if he was just some alien guy, it would probably fit better. And it's not just due to my faith. Like, if it wasn't painfully obvious, I am on the spectrum. Oh, yes, I know the spectrum, this confusing, ambiguous thing that so many people don't understand, when at the end of the day, it's just a label, right? Well, one of my weirds, we'll call them quirks, shall we, is that there are some words that I don't like. I don't like to hear them, I don't like to say them. Whether they be swears, slurs, or titles, they're just something that bothers me personally. Now, I know that's hardly relatable, but yeah, hopefully that gives you some more context into what I was talking about.
Aw, young, innocent 14-year-old me getting offended at old Doctor Who. He would shudder to think of some of the things these eyes have seen. Anyway, just thinking about the old days. Man, the jokes my oldest friend William used to make. He was someone else I dragged along to the lunchtime Whovian viewings after my mate Andreas invited me along. Yeah, Will's got into it, sort of, but he never got quite as engrossed as Andreas and I did. I'll never forget he used to make these jokes about the evil green light featured in these episodes. Ooh, beware death by green light, ooh! Cheeky bugger. He still doesn't let me forget it to this day. Right, I don't really want to spend too much time talking about this one because it feels super disingenuous, speaking poorly about a serial that is generally regarded as a classic because of my own admittedly unrelatable reasons. The story is simple. A four-parter from 1975 that sees an Egyptian Darth Vader wannabe use his mummified minions to construct a missile or rocket in order to blow up the titular pyramid on Mars to free him from captivity. Or at least I think so. Something does explode, but it doesn't actually affect whatever's going on Mars, and come to think of it, I couldn't really keep track of what was going on where a lot of characters were getting transported between one spot and the other throughout the story. Actually, the only pyramid I can recall was the one that was built by the mummies on Earth that exploded. So either I wasn't paying attention properly, or the story's a lot more whack than some of you are willing to admit. More like the pyramid on Earth. That has nothing to do with what's going on Mars. Well, anyway, there's a lot of faffing about in the woods, like a lot of faffing about in the woods. But eventually, the Doctor and Sarah Jade save the day thanks to some good old sci-fi mumbo-jumbo. Objectively, stuff actually happens, unlike last week's Planet of Evil. Like, there is action and good moments of character interaction, so it's not like I'm saying it's a bad serial by any means. But I just couldn't enjoy it. Some of you may be able to relate to this, but it takes a lot of, not necessarily a suspension of disbelief, but like getting yourself into the right mindset to be able to sit down and enjoy old school sci-fi. But this just had a bit too much going against it for me. Which is a shame, because despite the villain being essentially a discount Omega from the Three Doctors, seriously, think about it, if he was just like a generic alien that had nothing to do with Mars or Egyptian deities, then it might have been a perfectly serviceable story. As it is, it's not one I'll seek to revisit. Ever. I've done my second viewing for the sake of this review, and quite frankly, that's enough for me. That's not to say that there aren't moments of gold that shine through for me. For instance, this blink and you'll miss it gag that quickly became an absolute favourite for fans. And the smoke effects in this one scene are so cool. I have no idea how they did that. Oh, and there's even some unintentionally hilarious cringe, like this iconic death scene that I actually forgot about, but as soon as I saw it pop up, I'm like, oh yes, that brings back all the memories of us immature teenagers in the High School Appreciation Society laughing about that particular death. Also, the melodramatic no! See? I told you it was a Darth Vader wannabe. Personally, my favourite part of this whole serial was at the beginning when Sarah emerges from, I don't know, the TARDIS changing rooms wearing this magnificent flowing gown, and the Doctor mentions that it used to belong to Victoria. Out of the blue, we get a direct reference to our beloved Victoria, one of my favourite companions. Admittedly, I might have had a bit of a crush, but what a really cool acknowledgement and throwback to Patrick Troughton's era. And finally, before I wrap this up, I think I've discovered a really good Fourth Doctor drinking game. Have a glass of water every time Tom Baker's Doctor winds up unconscious. You'll never be dehydrated, believe me. I feel like I should have been keeping track of this instead of every time the TARDIS dies. Oh my goodness, the Doctor is unconscious.
Now, I don't have a Patreon, but darn it, I really just wanted to say a massive thank you to everyone that watches these videos, especially those that comment regularly, like Tedious Milkshake, Andrew Bowman, Lucy Licious, The Twixverse, Firewolf, Ashley Sherlock, Nymphadel Sullivan, Nate Stadler, and of course, the Enigma themselves, Matthew Bolitho Jones. You are the reason I keep doing this and find the motivation week after week to make a review. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for watching. I really hope I didn't anger anyone with my unorthodox opinions. To make up for the shorter video, I just released another Doctor Who spin-off review, so feel free to check that one out if you haven't already. Next week is the Android Invasion, which I know absolutely nothing about, but hopefully it's good. Catch you next time.